I'm Gloria Besbris. Came to Kalamazoo when I was 3 months old from Lansing, Michigan in 1929. And I have been here my entire life. If I go back to my parents, to my father, my father was Morris Rose. We came to Kalamazoo Depression. He went into business for himself in the auto parts business with a little tiny shack on Vine Street. From this little tiny shack that my father could not afford to pay the rent. And he had a friend and he said, "You can use this building and when you can afford to pay me, you'll pay me rent." And I would pedal on my bicycle and take him lunch, and my mother was the bookkeeper, and he hired somebody to take the cars apart. And from that little business, it's now a 4-generation business.
Hi, I'm Fran Raffel. My maiden name is Gerber. I'm a native of Kalamazoo and a member of the Congregation of Moses my whole life. I was named here, went to the religious school all the years, learned Hebrew. My parents also helped with the community. My father was in the scrap metal business, and during World War II, he had his classification. I don't recall what it is, but he was able to stay here in Kalamazoo because he told me he knew how to use a blowtorch in case we had problems here to free people from buildings. He also was a friend of Dr. Homer Stryker. He made a rod for somebody's leg whose leg was broken, and Dr. Stryker asked him to make that.
My name is Miriam Brot, and I have lived in Kalamazoo all my life. My parents had a very religious home. We had a religious home life. My husband had a clothing store. It was called Hep's. He purchased it from Mr. Libben and Mr. Hepner years ago. He was a go-getter in Kalamazoo. He worked for almost all the organizations in town. And I don't know where he found time to do everything that he did, but he did.
During those years, well, like our parents, like my father came from Europe, came to Ellis Island, the religious families, but when we got into the small community and the non-Jewish community, I think we tried to be more American. I mean, I don't know that we tried deliberately to be not religious, but I think my parents did not carry on what his parents. And I don't know that I've carried on even as much as my father. I definitely remember coming home from school one day crying because somebody had said, like, "You're a dirty Jew." And I really didn't get it, but I know I felt really bad, and I honestly can't remember how old I was. I must have been quite young. But I mean, I never was really, thank heavens, in Kalamazoo. I wouldn't say that I was treated badly, but I had uncomfortable times with the prayer in the school. When you're Jewish and the prayer is Christian, then you have a little discomfort. I chose to be in the robe choir at Central High School, which meant we did the Christmas pageant. I was in the first confirmation class at the Congregation of Moses on Park Street, and our rabbi was Captain Nathan Levinson. We all got this beautiful Bible signed by Captain Nathan Levinson upon our graduation, and of course he did come back after the service back to Kalamazoo.
My father was one of the gentlemen that carried the Torah,
the Holy Scrolls, and my father and Fran's, all three of our fathers, they carried the Torahs down the steps from the Park Street Synagogue all the way over to Stadium Drive and to our brand new building. And it was the religious time, and it was a festive time, and it was just, and then they put the Torahs that came from the old synagogue into the ark in this synagogue.
Well, it was very special for our synagogue because we probably would never do that again. It would probably be a one once-in-a-lifetime event.
For a small Jewish population of Kalamazoo, to raise the money and construct our house of worship was a milestone in itself, let alone taking our memories from one building into a new synagogue. It was very special. Well, I had two cousins who served during World War II, Alfred Hadesman and Jack Fisher. And I remember the family talking about them going off to war, where they served. There were a group of ladies who packaged things for our armed services personnel, and they would wrap them up and they'd ship them overseas to wherever they were.
The men were in the service and the women were holding down a lot of the jobs in the factories, building the Jeeps. And I think even in Kalamazoo, they were building Jeeps on Lake Street or somewhere. There was a factory. They were building Jeeps for the war.
The aunt who raised my mother taught her how to do many things. For example, when you don't have money, you use the butcher paper. This was a wonderful story. And from the market, and afterwards you wash it because it had that wax paper-like lining inside. And then they would save them up and use them to cut patterns to make clothing. And everything was from scratch. She learned how to knit and crochet and sew. They didn't waste anything. Even when they peeled a carrot, they would wash that off. They would make vegetable soup with that because it flavored it. And then they'd strain it, and whatever garbage they had, they'd bury in their backyard. But everything was recycled, everything was reused for the good because they did not have the money back then. I mean, obviously a lot of families were destroyed. Ours wasn't, were here already. So that was fortunate for us, but not for many of our friends and their families. And
all of my father's siblings did not come from Europe, and I think they really didn't know how they died in the end. It was very possible they could have been in a concentration camp.
We had grandparents that were in Russia, and we thought that they were put through the gas chambers, but since one of the members of our family has gone to Europe and explored, and he said that they were not put through the gas chambers but were shot. There was always that doubt, or were they living, were they not living, and until we found out for sure that they were gone. It was something that remained with our family and talked about for a long time.